Good day, everybody, and welcome to this week's VIN-dow with Robert Hollinshead. And good March. It's March, Bob. For us up here, we see the end of the winter coming. I know it's been a little while since we did the podcast. Took a little sun vacation down the Caribbean, but I'm glad to be
Nice
back
move,
at it.
pal. Love it.
Yeah, it was good. Took the family down. It was great.
Can't beat
But
that with
the
two
car
sticks.
Yeah, the car market's been roaring along, hasn't it?
It's unbelievable, actually. It's incomprehensible. I'd have bet my life that it couldn't flip-flop back the other direction again after coming off the other side of the sliding board. Unbelievable. Yeah, the daffodils are actually popping out. We didn't even have one inch of snow for the entire season. First time it's ever happened in Manheim, Pennsylvania, that we didn't have at least something to talk about, like to break out the trucks or something. A lot of these guys are gagging to bought their trucks with the plows. They got nothing to do. So we're good for us. I'm just hoping that we don't have some sort of a cataclysmic hail event. You know what I mean? Because now we're coming into the point where hail could start showing up, and we haven't had one of them for 5 or 10 years. I think the last one was about 10 years ago. It was a total disaster. So, hopefully we'll be able to avoid that this time. You know what I mean? So, Shawnee, the reason I think we were thinking about having a little conversation today is we could talk about a lot of different things, but one of them is everybody's feathers are. It seems like a lot of used car dealers, a lot of new car dealers have got their feathers flustered over. Cox bought the tread, right? And I think a lot of people, when they see that, they feel betrayed, I guess, right? Because when you think about it, there's like three participants in the typical car sale. There's a consumer, a dealer, and a vendor that is either doing advertising or sending leads or whatever to the dealer, right? And when we see this, where it looks like the vendor is leapfrogging their only customer. So in other words, to be clear about this, it's not as if vendors have 2 or 3 different categories of customers. They only got one. It's called a car dealer. It could be new car, could be used car, but they only got one. Any DMS, any, just pick any kind of a vendor. There's only one customer. They're not the consumer's not the customer; it's a dealer. So when you think about it, you don't even have to think very hard. It's very easy for, I think, this knee-jerk reaction that dealers of all flavors, sizes, whatever, they feel more than offended. It's kind of like you're their customer, loyal or unloyal. You're their customer for, in many cases, 20, 30, and sometimes 40 years with different products under the umbrella of the company. It's weird. Now, I don't personally think that it's anything other than a miscommunication. So miscommunication, you're saying, we talking about, you moron. No, I think it's miscommunication. So when they take their statistics and break out, we're just going to use round statistics for a second because they're not, it's just roundness, right? Or how used cars are sold. If it's a third a dealer, a third used car dealer, a third new car dealer, and a third consumer to consumer, they're looking at that in I think a relatively naive way without understanding what it means to the dealer when it looks like they're trying to leapfrog them, right? And I think that can happen in corporate circumstances where they don't necessarily take the even if it's not consciously. I think they can overlook how we as users of their various products for different reasons, how we can be insulted. And I think it's very difficult to take the position that it's not insulting, right? When you're being perceived as getting in the middle of the middle. So if the dealer's in the middle, vendors on one side, consumers on the other, dealers in the middle, dealers paying for everything. Nobody else is paying for nothing. In many cases, they got 10, 12 products they're paying for. And now all of a sudden you're seeing, because we as dealers lump all of these things into one thing. They don't realize that there's different business units. They all have their goals that they have to make, increase their revenue, et cetera, et cetera. It's not as if there's like one head of everything that is, the guiding light. No, there's different business units with different leaders, and they're trying to do what they're supposed to do, help their company, the mother of the companies, make a profit, right? So in this miscommunicate, it actually happened. It goes all the way back to when Chip Perry first started Auto Trader. Right? Like, we saw it as a weird thing for a lot of different reasons, because we're naive, and then we had to get to a point where we could see where there was going to be a partnership there and all the rest of it, right? Where it's good for the dealer that they're at the auction, they're listing their cars. They built machines at the gates of all the auction. Of course, that never worked, but the intent was to capture those cars at the point that they're leaving the auction, or there are no sales at an auction, to list them on Auto Trader. So just an example of how these things take place, right? And my feeling is there's a really simple solution. So years ago, when Trent, not many years, but let's call it 6, 7, 8 years ago, when whatever the number is, when Tread first came out, we saw it as an interesting combination for, at that time, AccuTrade, where we would actually be doing a condition report, giving a dealer with pricing, and a consumer would actually have an instant cash offer for their car. So that's one piece of it, right? And never went anywhere, didn't go off the ground for who knows whatever reason. I don't even have a recollection of it. But when you think about this, they could resolve this entire this controversy. It's not a controversy. It's only the dealer that's upset. I don't even know they have the awareness of the fact that dealers are upset about it, right? By simply pulling the consumer out of the other side of the equation, right? If you have a consumer who wants to sell a car, and they've proven that to a certain degree that a consumer will take the pictures, it will do a good description on their car, maybe even tell you a nice little story about their car, and the model that they're currently going down, with Westlake or whatever's going to do the financing, somebody else is going to do the insurance, and somehow or other you're going to get all these things approved to make it work. For the person that wants to sell the car, as far as I'm concerned, if they do the pictures and they do all answer the 12 questions that they're being asked, right? There's not a dealer in the world that wouldn't want those leads. And more importantly, they won't convert over a 2, 3, 4 week period where you're fielding calls and getting all credit, was it, and you couldn't, and all the rest of that nonsense. Dealer going to buy the car today. There isn't many cars on the road that are worth buying that don't have a payoff. And in most cases, that's more than the value of the car. So if somebody could tell me that they're somehow going to overcome that, whether somebody is going to pay the car off and guarantee the title, and it really was the person that was selling, and all the things that happen when you're doing private transactions, right, that somehow or other that's going to work out to be a more efficient process than letting the consumer take the pictures, tell us about your little hamburger, and put it in front of motivated, capable car dealers to buy that car. You follow me? I think you've resolved the issue altogether. Now, if a consumer wants to pop up out of the woodwork and simultaneously say, I'll take that car before a dealer writes a check 3 seconds after it's listed, go ahead and fire away. The probability that happen is extraordinarily low. Right, when we're looking at these statistics this morning, Shani, and it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 sold peer to peer, 1/3 sold, at a used car dealer, 1/3 sold at a new car dealer. Well, my question is, what price range are those cars? Are they $10 cars? Are they $54,000 cars that the consumer bought from a consumer? Not likely. Because if they did sell it for X amount of money, A, somebody's got to pay off the car. B, somebody's got to go get financing. Because the probability of somebody just waiting around with $54,000 in their pocket to go pay a stranger for a car is extraordinarily low. If you just take 1 second, look left and right, of all the people that who's the last one that said, "Oh yeah, I didn't want to buy a car from a dealer, so I just sat around waiting for a car to get listed by an individual that I thought I would like to buy, and I raced over it, and I gave him cash for the car." If anybody could tell me they know somebody that's done that, I'd be flabbergasted, to be perfectly frank with you. I just don't think it happens. with that said, I guess there is no conclusion to this story other than the fact I believe the circumstance with whatever purchase that Cox made with Tread could really be a tremendous opportunity for them to actually repair the concept of a dealer being pissed that it happened and they're getting cut out of this 1/3 of all the transactions that take place. The consumer, the girl that wants to sell their car, they're going to have much better experience. Let a dealer buy that car. They definitely going to buy the car, and they're going to pay whatever they said they're going to pay. Make that the rule on Tread, or they don't get the leads anymore. They'll definitely fall in line and do what they're supposed to do. And then the cars are actually going to land where they belong, where a dealer actually is, putting the car in inventory, potentially taking it to a Manheim auction, potentially using all the other tools to maybe put it back on Auto Trader to sell it to a better end user. You follow me? And I think that could be rectified without any difficulty whatsoever, to be perfectly frank with you. I think they just, at the moment, this thing that, again, has everybody's feathers flying in all different directions. Somebody should really be making. I'm not about to tell anybody to do anything, but my suggestion would be somebody would actually mitigate this animosity. Let's all go to independent auctions. Let's quit their products. Let's do these things. It's all because wars are started because there's no communication. He said something. What did he say? I didn't understand it, but he said it. Let's go kill him. What's the point to that? Settle down a second, and hopefully, and I'm kind of fairly certain that it's not their intention to upset a dealer. It's just a lack of perception of who we are, or understanding of who we are, and then a lack of making that communication where it's a new opportunity for dealers as opposed to they're going to monopolize, they're going to kill us, they're things. No. As far as I'm concerned, I don't believe it to be the case. I just think it's an oversight and a miscommunication between. We all breathe the same air, and theoretically, you're all dealing with the same commodity cars. I think there's a massive gap that exists between who folks that work in corporations are compared to who folks that are actually traders, that have their skin in the game, that got their life invested in it, that work, like long hours. Our choice to do that. We love doing it, but it's a different set of language and communication that exists in these two. Otherwise, you can't perceive differences in these human beings. It just happens to be a massive gap when it comes to communication. That's my personal point of view.
I think you laid out a pretty interesting business model there that rings true. I know I was taken aback when you said to me, you said, when was the last time you heard somebody buy a $30,000 car from somebody else? And I was like,
doesn't happen.
Good point.
It don't happen in the real world. You know what I mean? And honestly, from Cox's standpoint, it's a good thing, in their mind that they're doing something. Car gurus bought Car Offer. Well, it's floundering, but it's they did it, and therefore somebody else has to do something else, right? So, Cars bought AccuTrade, so they did it, and as a result, they've made it clear at NADA, we're going to make acquisitions. Okay, good. Hopefully when you make them, your only customer doesn't become annoyed to the point where you might lose business on the other side. Just my suggestion would be to make a very clear statements, not about how many cars you're missing because of somebody else bought it from the individual, which they didn't. You follow me? I don't care what anybody tells you. It just doesn't happen that way. And make it easy for a dealer to have access to the cars. It's that simple.
Thank you, Bob.
My pleasure, guys and girls. Have a nice week. We'll see you next week.